Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm a little tired to the 87th episode, special episode of the HSBG podcast. I'm your host, Educatedcollins. I'm here with my constant co-host, Shady Bunny. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Collins. Excited for our two special guests today.
Yes, we have two special guests with us today. On one side, you know her, you love her, player extraordinaire turned caster extraordinaire turned developer extraordinaire. She can do it all. Give it up for Gia! And on the
I
other
feel like
side,
I'm a wrestler being introduced to the ring. Thank you, Collins.
he's a man that holds all of Bob's RNG in his hands, the one who leads the charge on the design of the new Battlegrounds cards. So prolific, he even gets confused for other team members. Give it up for John McIntrye!
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you both on this podcast. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Same here.
Collins, before we start, maybe
Yes.
want to just change the game category, but you still need to put that on.
Oh, yes.
We're ready to roll after that. That'd be a shame.
Yes, mods can do that for sure.
Miner's done it. Yeah, we're good.
All
Okay.
right. Sounds
Let's
good.
roll.
First things first, Gia. I know you're recently new to Blizzard. I wanted to ask, how has been your experience at Blizzard? How has the change been? I know you've done a lot of things, so how does that feel compared to everything else?
Oh, it's been great. It's a lot though, because on top of starting a new job, it's actually my first job in an office because I've been casting for so long, and it's my first time living away from home, and I'm in a new country and all of that. So lots of big adjustments, but I joined at a pretty fun time of the year. When I started on the team, Undead were mostly already done, just helped out with some of the last balance tweaks. And so this is the first set of content that I had at least a minor contribution to that we're now revealing. It's very exciting.
That's going to be really cool. So, yeah, there has been so many reveals today, and we do want to cover a lot of the stuff that's been revealed, but we do have our own unique things to cover, things that haven't been revealed yet. That's what we're going to focus on. But then after we're done with that, if we have some time left, we'll try to hit some points, some things that we want to talk about, cards that we think, oh, these are interesting. So, first things first, we do have removed cards. So there's going to be 16 removed cards that will be gone in the game. 2 have already been removed, but they're in my notes, so I put them in anyway. So,
Yeah, that's the Kano Tank and the White Man.
Yeah, Kano Tank and White Man. So we do want to kind of talk about some of them. Some of them I think are more obvious why they're being removed, but there are some that I do want to get your thoughts on. Like, why'd we remove this or no? But if we want to go through the list, like quick, we do have the picture up, but we have Imprisoner, South Scale Honsho, Glyph Guardian, Yoho Ogre, Stasis Elemental, Khadgar, Bonker, Major Domu, Dragon Enforcer, Kano Tank, Baby Crush, White Mane, Razor Gore, Pillcell, Crocless, Tony, Two Tusk, and then Imp Mama. Whew. I'm really sad about Khadgar, by the way.
I got being removed as exciting. Yeah.
I think we might need a moment of silence for him.
It's essentially the Exodia Pirate comp removed, right? Unless you can still run a Golden Baron, but to go really toe-to-toe with endgame builds, you'd need Khadgars.
Yeah. So Khadgar has always been like I would say a problematic card in the game because it allows for so many things. And I completely understand why it's being removed now, because you guys are adding so much Reborn, right? And the way Khadgar interacts with Reborn is so not fair, not balanced, really. So I could definitely see it. But I love Pirate Exodia so much that I'm a little sad that it's...
Yeah, Khadgar is one of these cards where it's really flashy. It's like, oh, anything can happen in Hearthstone. It breaks all the rules. But those flashy cards, they can like block off a lot of design space. So we like putting them in when we can. But at some point, Khadgar has to go so we can do other things. A similar card that I might compare is Chroma Wing, where Chroma Wing's had a few times with like Vol'jin's Buddy or the Alchemist that swaps attack and health. It's like it's just a very dangerous card to exist in the game.
Very true.
Makes sense.
So first things off, we do have Imprisoner also being removed. I think this one makes sense. I mean, the card is pretty good, and you're adding a lot of replacements.
Yeah, with the introduction of dual type, and we tried to hit like a even distribution of every minion type getting at least 2 new dual types. So we just kind of had to see, okay, what tiers were we hoping to add into, and roughly analogously taking out minions from the same tier. And in terms of overall philosophy of what to remove, we just tried not to touch things that are crucial to most comps, right? Where Imprisoner does have some good synergy here and there, but it's not really necessary to make any one endgame thing work.
Yeah. Speaking of,
So, yeah, I was just gonna ask, like the bulk of the removals then is just to make space for the dual types. It's not so much that they were in the in the way, but in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say though, solid scale Honsho, I would say it's pretty crucial for something. Shady, you want to talk about this card?
Yeah, well, this card was largely addressed with Toxfin moving to 6. I will say that before Toxfin went to 6, my game plan on pretty much any hero was to play Honchos, make high health Murlocs, and then cycle for Toxfins, and that was extremely consistent in high MMR play. But I think the main problem with Honsho has already been resolved with Toxin being on 6. But it's a card we've gone pretty used to. Like, this was a really good card to set up your Murloc early game. Like, if you have 2 of these in the tavern, you can still do it, even with Toxin on 6. Well, not anymore when they're removed, but just because War Leader gives extra attack, and you can play a Swolfin later on, and then the Swap Striker gets extra attack naturally. So yeah, Honsho I would feel more like a card that it's not so much just let's just make space. This feels like it does impact how you play Murloc's early game.
Yeah, it is a card that I'm sure will be missed, but in terms of the Murlocs we're replacing it with are 2 dual types. Actually, both of them do have scaling effects. So Blazing Skyfin, it's the sort of crowd favorite callback, Murloc Dragon. And then we have Magma Lock on tier 4, which is a Murloc Elemental, also scales itself. Of course, the big difference being these 2 minions scale themselves rather than other things, but I feel like Honsho will have some good enough replacements.
Yeah,
I think also when making an update, we want the game to be different afterwards. And if we're just taking out the cards that were the lowest impact and replacing them, that it isn't as impactful as taking out some cards that did play a key role. I think, like Gia mentioned, there's some cards that fulfill a slightly similar role. It's a different flavor on it. But yeah, that's kind of the philosophy when taking cards out.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense here. Next, we do have Glyph Guardian. I think this one makes sense. It isn't super impactful. There was like this one thing where you could, if it survives a hit, it gets double attack, right? So you can quadruple attack if it's golden. It can have insane stats. So sometimes this might be like the best card for killing like a gigantic battle master or something like that. But other than that, I think it makes sense to be one of the cards being removed.
Yeah, it feels pretty low impact overall. Like, yeah.
There's a question in chat I wanted to address, which is if Honsho stayed, would it be a dual type Murloc pirate? Because I think that's a good question to sort of clue into the mindset that we have with dual type overall, because all our dual type minions can appear in a lobby. Let's say you had a Murloc Dragon, it can appear in a Murloc only lobby and in a Dragon only lobby and in a Murloc Dragon lobby. So if Honsho were a Murloc pirate and it appeared in a pirate only lobby, it would make completely no sense. So this is not something we would have turned into a dual type Murloc pirate, even though it would look a little bit like a pirate. If the visual like art of it is not saying this has to be of a certain dual type synergy, then we would of course look towards the effect as the priority.
That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Next we have Yoho Ogre. Won't be missed.
Yeah, this feels like filler for the most. Other than that one glorious time where you just buff it and you kill like a frog board or something because it keeps attacking back, but for the most part, just stuff you bought on tier 2 and then sold.
I made a golden one. It had with like 15 health super early in the game. It killed everything every time. I was just like, thank you. Next we have Stasis Elemental. This card I actually kind of liked a little bit because I would play like Demon Elemental, Fellbat stuff, and you could hold one of these in your hand. You play it when you're in your turn, and then you get a big Elemental that you guarantee eat. That was the nice thing. But other than that, it wasn't like that important to the game, so I can understand this being.
If you like elemental demon comps, maybe its replacement Fellemental is interesting to you. That's the one that buffs all minions in Bob's Tavern.
I haven't seen the new stuff because I've been working on this topic. So
Okay,
yeah.
Shady has
It's,
Shady's the one. Like,
I would say
through.
for we split the work. So I would say that for Collins's taste, it's too slow because he likes to just jam golden light spawn with a bunch of avenge and then buff and then eat like 40/40s in the shop. So I suppose with Fellemental, it could be like a golden brand type stuff where you do get lots and lots of triggers, but that's a bit more setup than just rolling into a light spawn. I love that comp as well. It's super fun, just eating huge elementals in the shop.
Don't like it as much as I do, Shady.
Yeah, of course. It's also nice with Mind Muck. That was such a nice addition for it because even with quests with the odd even quest above 7/7 in the tavern, like Mind Muck is so good with that. So much value. Anyways, not to get too much off topic. Yeah, but yeah. Stasis, other than that, not really a crazy card.
Yep. Next we have Bonker being removed. This one really was pretty good. Like always. Loved getting it early. I know Galakron really loves hitting this early, and you just keep him forever. But I'm sure there's beautiful replacements
for me. Bonker's probably one of the more like sad ones that I see leaving because I really like 4-on-4 with Togwaggle or early 4-drops with Toki, and this is just the nuts if you get it super early on the board. You can also, quests, I'm assuming, are rotating out, but the Parasol is also so good with this because you can just have one Bonker on your board early game, and it just keeps attacking. It's so much fun. So probably the most fun card for me that I see going.
Next up, we do have Magma Exodus. This card really, I think, was just a Millhouse like key card where you just cycle so much and you skill it. It also had a lot of synergy with the 5-drop taunt that scales every time a Murloc's buffed. That would be the combo. You'd play that and those two cards together, and you just get insane health minion. Kind of wondering, what's the thoughts on this one being in place? Just like no rumor.
So when designing our dual type minions, we looked at where mechanically minion types overlapped. We had Murlocs and Elementals as a pairing, and they do a lot of cycling of minions. And that's how we landed on Magma Lock. That's a tier 4 1/1. At the end of your turn, gain +1/+1 for every minion you played this turn. So very similar. It's not as restrictive of it has to be Elementals, but it's similar in that you cycle a lot of minions, you get stats. Whereas Executus, you can choose what gets buffed. It's just Magma Lock that gets buffed. But
So
they
actually,
have a similar role.
that was the original text on Magma Lock, was +1/+1 for each
Repeats,
play.
right?
But yeah, we changed it to repeat actually, so that Executus type effects could still exist to synergize with Master of Realities.
Very cool. Very cool.
I knew as I was saying it, I'm like, is this the right one? Because we changed at some point. So thanks for the correction.
Yeah, no worries. We went through so many cycles of this; it's tough to remember. Like,
But next up we do have Dractive Enforcer. This is more of a George card. I don't really think a lot of the heroes would use
Just
this.
feels like a filler, basically. Like, yeah, I guess I could play this sometimes, but most of the time you just roll past it.
I love cards that can say, hey, do this mechanic. I think, again, we have a dual type that just serves this role better. Cyborg Dragon, that's a Divine Shield Dragon mech, and it gives your Divine Shield minions +10 attack.
We're gonna talk about
Yeah, I want to talk about that one later. It feels pretty good.
And then next up, we have a card already been removed, but I did kind of want to talk about why it did get removed. Like the previous patch with Kano Tank. So it deals 5 to the highest health. This card did used to be like Omega strong, very strong, and very overpowering. Then I think power levels got ramped up a little bit, and then it kind of fell by the wayside of not being like that important to run. But I definitely do remember a period where if you had this early, you kind of just won the early game.
Yeah, it was 6 damage back then, though, right? So it did get nerfed.
Sure.
But I do remember when you played the global games, I think, or like the big
Something like that.
tournament, and that was essentially everybody just tries to triple into a tank or roll a tank early. That was very high tempo meta. Yeah, I think this is again, right? It was not such a great card anymore later in the game. So
Cool. And we do have Baby Crush. I think Baby Crush. I'm happy to see gone. I don't like this card. This card just the way you can just take so much or take max damage if you miss a 50-50 is just like so frustrating, I guess, to deal with. So it didn't create happy experiences, I would say, for me or maybe other players. So definitely happy to see this one gone.
yeah, I wholeheartedly second that. That was
Any thoughts
very
on that?
frustrating. Yeah, essentially, was this a card where you guys was it mainly let's just make space, or was it also like, well, this is a problematic card?
I'd say a
Um,
mix of both,
y-
as the beasts that we're adding are both high tier, 5 and 6 in the dual types. It made sense to remove higher tier beasts, and I personally am aware that Baby Crush has had very mixed sentiments towards it, and I think especially with Undead in the meta, where there are a lot of tokeny based strategies, Baby Crush is maybe just a little bit too over there as well.
Okay, cool.
Makes a ton of sense. And we have I should probably talk about Croc next, right? Where's my Croc? There you are. We've got Pillcell Crocalus, kind of in the same vein, another high tier beast. Probably just this one moved more for design space. This card was very good though, but I can see just like having
Yeah, so I guess Fell Stomper fills a similar role of that high-end minion that rewards you for doing a very swarmy type archetype. Fell Stomper, if you haven't seen it yet, Collins, is after you summon a minion in combat, give all your minions +3 attack. And it's a demon beast. So something to support like token demons at the high end, which they've been historically kind of lacking in.
is it kind of like what's that one card? Redrop? Oh, no.
Yeah, the ghoul or the 2/4 that is
Yeah, the
avenge,
2/4, yeah,
give 3
yeah.
attack, but that's the menagerie. That's a menagerie buffer.
right,
This
right.
one buffs your whole board.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there is a big impact here though with Croc being a 5 and Fell Stomper being a 6 because beasts that was sort of iconic to go for 5s with Mama and Croc, and now well Baby Crush as well, a little less so, not so much an engine, more just tempo. So that does change the way how you think about beasts, where it's pretty much just Mama because the other beast is Blanche, I believe, the 4/4.
Yeah.
That's also not really that identity of a Croc where you don't triple into a Blanche and you're like, yeah, I'm winning every fight now. So yeah, but I mean that's fine, right? Got to shake things up. That definitely
Yeah,
does
spreading the
change.
power level across more like to tier 6 now.
All right. Sounds good. Next up, we do have White Mane. I did want to talk about White Mane. It's been removed already, but this card had a big impact while it was in the game, and I did kind of want to know, what the thoughts on being removed. I don't think it was like super problematic. It did the issue is it did shut down some comps. You couldn't just there were some comps you just couldn't run because they had a white. If they hit a White Mane, you die, right? Because it will shut down your whole comp and you'll take max damage. So that was kind of a problem, but I don't like leapers, and this this was the solution. So now I'm just like, I lose the leap.
Yeah.
Yeah, to speak on that a bit, I think leapers and strategies dependent on Baron. There's always that counter of Zap, and then Uther was added to the game, which can get things out of Zap range. So this was some counterplay to not just like leapers, but any strategy where it's dependent on one minion. you can try and counter them, and there's a bit of fun mind games of guessing where they put it, a bit like I guess Battleship. So we thought that was fun, but I think the extremes of gameplay it led to, of my entire comp is now deleted because they guessed right, was frustrating at a lot of times. So rotated out early. I do think there are some. There's a card that can help against sleepers that was added in. That's added in 25.2.
Sounds good. Next we have Razorgore. This card was good, but it didn't like fill a niche or a composition, so I can see it being a card to remove to fit other. That one just. Next up, we have Tony Two Tusk. Now this one, I think, needs to be talked about. This card definitely was. It warped the game. I think is accurate to say. At least in high level lobbies, the ability to just get in like a Hogger so quickly, golden, and then if you hit one more Hogger, you're infinite. It was just so quick and so abrupt that you could definitely lose games out of nowhere, or win games out of nowhere. I definitely, and it's also so flippy where if you don't get this Tony to proc, you're dead. But if you do get this Tony to proc, you can maneuver into a win very very easily. So definitely think it's a card that needed to be looked at, and now I'm actually happy to see it removed.
And this removal, I think, is very much one-to-one with the card that replaces it, because it does have a similar effect. On tier 6, we have Greta Goldgun. Even the name is in the same format. It's a tier 6 2/9 spellcraft, because it's Naga Pirate. Make a different friendly pirate or Naga Golden until next turn. So technically, there is still a way to get to your Golden Hogger or Golden Eliza rather quickly. I mean, just not by going through getting 3 copies and all that, but it's on tier 6 now and has synergy with plenty of other things, and I think has less of those negative feelings of, oh, did I get the setup and did it not get sniped in the combat? Did I get lucky there? And I think Tony also, with Avenge being the keyword and Undead in with lots of taunt, Reborn might be too easy to activate.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, having the activation on 6 is definitely a lot fairer, I would say, because you do have to get the 6 and then you have the other synergies where you can just triple into the Tony, triple into Hogger like very easily. You know, you get 2 5s and it's Hogger Tony. Oh, whoops! I've won on accident. I'm happy to see it a little bit harder to do. And then last up, we have Imp Mama. You take it away.
I like Imp Mama sort of as a menagerie buff option, but I do get that she is in the way, because I see a lot of people complaining about like, well, demons, why would I play demons, right? It's kind of just fell bet and this and that. So yeah, by opening up an extra 6-drop demon slot, I take it that you get to do a lot more with the type.
Yeah, in a weird way, we wanted to get rid of this piece so we could better promote the token demon strategy of making room for Fell Stomper. At this point, you don't really need ways to summon more minions. Demons have plenty of ways of doing that. You need a reason to do it and be rewarded for summoning minions. So that's part of why we took this out.
Makes a lot of sense. I didn't love this card. He did, you know, this card. You know, sometimes I did win my last game with it, you know, but generally, you know, I'm a Fell Bet you know, fan there, and I'm glad that one's sticking around. Definitely a fun card to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we do have 2 cards that are returning from the grave, you know, back from the dead. We've got Icy Imp and Budding Green Thumb. So those ones are pretty interesting. Icy Imp, I think it just fits the theme of the expansion with undeads and summoning more cards and Reborn. So that one I think makes a lot of sense. Any thoughts on why these 2 particular ones are being added?
Icky
Yeah,
Imp, we really. Oh, you go ahead, Gia.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. There are just tons of Avenge synergies to do, or not even Avenge as a keyword, but death synergies in general with Undead being back. And one reason I think that sticks out is because we are introducing Risen Rider, which is very similar to Acolyte of Cthulhu, which was almost universally considered the best tier 1 back in the day, and now it even has a minion type. I think it's important to have a couple 1-drops that actually match up well against that, so it's not just an auto pick every time you take it. And yeah, Icy Imp also synergizes with Fell Stomper on the top end, and I think is just a bit more of a flexible replacement to Imprisoner.
I think Icy Imp has interesting like fights with some early game minions in that it's 1 damage 3 different times. But we had to take it out for quests because it ramped up a few quests too quickly. So it kind of died for the sins of quest. And now that quests are out, we can bring Icy Imp back.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then Green Thumb, me and Shady, man, we were just like, Green Thumb's good from the beginning. And then everyone's like, you're crazy. Green Thumb's not that good. And then Shady's like, we just play, we just keep winning. Da, da, da. And then eventually, people started catching on. They're like, Green Thumb's pretty good. And now, I remember I was like, wait a minute, Shady. You're going too much into Green Thumb. He was like, no, Green Thumb tier 6, we just buy it. Like, I'm like, what? What are you talking about? But yeah, definitely a fun card. I think it makes a lot of sense in this meta as well. It definitely should just get better. So I'm happy to see it back. A really fun card, really cool, and opens up some nice synergies, nice turns. It's like skill so much. You buff double deflectos, things like that.
It's an extremely satisfying card early on. Yeah,
we did have a couple of feelings in playtime. Like people uttered the line, "I miss Green Thumb" while playing with Undead more than once. So you're not alone there.
Great. And we do have some revamped cards. So this is pretty interesting. Except for Amber Guardian. Amber Guardian is getting a technical fix that I think is deserved. But the other two are pretty interesting. So Amber Guardian is changing where once it becomes golden, instead of giving +4/+4, which I believe is what it was before, it's now going to give 2 friendly minions +2/+2 and Divine Shield. So I think that's going to be a lot better for how you use Amber Guardian. Most of the time you want to hit these specific minions, give them buffs, Terragosa mainly. And just giving 2 things Divine Shield is usually more powerful than giving 1 thing, more 2/2. Like
a lot of this comes from a feeling standpoint of we want tripling a minion to feel good.
Yeah.
And when it went from giving 2 minions Divine Shield to only 1, it felt bad often.
And this has some good synergy with the Cyborg Drake, I suppose, where it's more an aura type thing, so it will apply during the combat as they receive the Divine Shield.
Ah. Look at you. You know the new cards.
reading cards and stuff. All right.
Amazing. And next up, we do have a Peggy Sturdy Bone is changing to Peggy Brittle Bone, and that's it.
Other way around. Oh, it was Brittle Bone. It's changing to Sturdy Bone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have the text wrong then, because Brittle Bone has undead.
You have it right, but yeah, look at her picture, right? She used to be a skeleton, or she is a skeleton still. So the Sturdy Bone is the human form, or the fully human form, or whatever.
So to clarify, we changed her art and her name. We're going back in time before she died to when she was just a pirate. That way we can make it just a pirate because we don't want her to show up in undead lobbies. If she was in a lobby where there's undead and no pirates, she doesn't do anything. So it was to address that.
Okay. Yeah, you can really tell Collins doesn't buy every Peggy he sees. I love that card. Yeah, so this is essentially just more like technicality stuff, making sure that it just makes sense, that we don't want to be stuck with a card and like, why do I have this? Okay, cool.
Okay, so to clarify, in pirate lobbies you're gonna have Sturdy Bone, and then in undead lobbies you're gonna have both? Or
no, you'll have nothing.
Just one.
Peggy Brittle Bone is in the void. She doesn't exist.
Okay. But in undead lobbies you'll just have the Brittle Bone.
No. Peggy Brittle Bone is not a card.
Oh.
Right now. It's like so the old Peggy as we know it, which is Peggy Brittlebone, if she were still in the game, she'd be an undead pirate based on the art. But that is getting removed and replaced with Peggy Sturdybone because Peggy Brittlebone has no synergy with undead.
Okay, thank you.
That's great clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Essentially, I guess we get thrown off by the undead pirate tag.
Yeah, that's what
They were
threw me
like,
off.
that is
I was like,
definitely
oh,
Yeah,
we're
undead,
getting
yeah.
this
right?
added. Yeah.
So, but this is, I guess, for future purpose or whatnot, where it would make sense to have it as pirate undead. Okay, so
Gameplay is
then
basically no change. It's just
change.
to not confuse people of, hey, that's an undead. Why isn't that an undead
Okay.
minion?
Okay.
Yeah. Guess
So
we
then
didn't
I-
succeed though because we confused 2 people.
Well,
Well,
now
you
I'm
know.
not confused anymore. So I'm
we
glad we,
are
went
confused
through
for
this.
the benefit of everyone else,
Yeah.
so that is great. So then I'm assuming Baron is the same
So
stuff.
Baron is the same then.
There's no tag on Baron, and we
Ooh,
just
Baron is
Kind
not
of.
exactly the same
Oh,
because we
okay.
also have
Okay.
a functional text change here.
Okay.
yeah.
So
Okay, please go ahead.
so obviously, like thinking about it first, we're like, okay, Baron Rivendare, the character, is an undead, and we cannot have this card as an undead because we need
Right.
Rivendare to exist in all lobbies. So we're like, okay, let's undead, bring Rivendare back to life. So now it's Titus. And we were thinking, what if we did something different with it as well to help differentiate a bit better? And it's just an opportunity to try something new. So now we have your death rattles trigger an extra time, meaning that having 2 Rivendares of Titus on board would stack.
Hey, okay. So Baron's gone. But
Baron's gone.
Titus is
Yeah.
now the replacement. But it's also being changed where now you can run multiple Tituses. So,
You can have 3 golden if you want.
okay, I was just gonna say, to hear me out, 3 golden Tituses.
Yeah.
And no Mega Plus.
The
And
golden
a
version
Bob.
would just read 2 additional times then, and then essentially be Khadgar-esque, where you could just, all right, we fixed the Skelly comp. There we go.
Oh, right. I could just run these now.
Just roll a bunch of Barons. Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
Wisdom Ball, I need you.
I'm gonna be calling him Baron for a very long time,
I
even
will
though it's
still be doing
Titus.
I was
now.
wondering that as you were talking, like he's still gonna be called Baron, and new players will be like, I keep looking for this guy called Baron that people talk about.
Yeah, I'm still drafting Mal'Ganis, by the way. Like I haven't
Oh,
seen
yeah,
the
OGs,
capture
no?
net here, so yeah, it's taken me a while. So, but yeah, no, the picture here is different, so I think that helps a lot. Where Mal'Ganis, it is different, but it still felt like I looked at it as like, yeah, that's a Mal'Ganis. Like here, I feel like I've got different colors and everything.
All right, sounds good. And then we do have a couple more changes, some hero changes. So we do have 4 hero changes for you guys today. Starting off with Gilwing. And Gilwing, I like this. I've been not complaining. I've been wondering with Gilwing, when you go to a destination, you can pick the same destination and it takes you 5 turns or 3 turns to go back. You're already there. Like, what's going on? So, it's getting a new hero power. So, you have different flight paths now. Westfall is now in 1 turn, give your leftmost minion +2/+2. Ironforge is now in 2 turns, getting 2 gold. And then Eastern Plaguelands is now in 3 turns, discover a minion of your tower and tier. So that one was Ironforge before. Now it's becoming Eastern Plagueland. And the cool thing is you can't pick the same location twice. So you can't go from Ironforge back to Ironforge, which is what we used to do before. Now you have to go pick somewhere other location and then come back to Ironforge if you want to. So definitely a functional change, one I appreciate logically. And so I like this.
Yeah. Like, I wanted to ask you guys a question. Do you think this change is a buff or a nerf?
This is a nerf. Because I would.
The straight instinct is nerfed because I like slamming. Former Ironforge, I like slamming Plaguelands now, but
you have to play it.
With a change like this, there's always a chance that there's some cool curve you can do that's very specifically in this meta. Just makes a ton of sense. So if that's the case, then we can get stronger. But the instinct is I just want to discover minions as fast as possible.
Okay. Well, happy to hear the instinct because this was definitely a bit above the power level. I mean, the old Gilwing that we were aiming for. And also we found the play pattern of just slamming the middle button every time problematic. So now not only can you slam the same button every time, you even have to read the button because the middle button is not what you think it does anymore.
That's going to catch a lot of people off guard at this turn.
I'm going to be Ironforging an instinct and then being confused. Like, where's my card? Oh, I got gold. I do think the Ironforge gaining 2 gold can be the difference maker in whether this is broken or like very strong or like better than before. If you can find a curve where you can use that 2 gold in a very optimal setting, but other than that, like I haven't tested and just looking at it, you are limited than what you were before. So it should theoretically be a nerf, but there might be a way where that 2 gold is makes a big impact.
It's more interesting regardless. So that's cool. That's fun.
I think this is a good opportunity to speak a little bit about balance philosophy of when do we nerf something, because there's more aspects than just their power level. There's like, hey, how frustrating is this to lose against? And there's how long have they been at the top of the tier list? I think Gale Wing's one of these heroes where when it's the best hero, we're not super stressed. It's not too frustrating to play against. Maybe a more frustrating hero to play against might be Eudora, where it's really swingy and she might blow you out some games and do very poorly others. But Gale Wing feels pretty fair to play against, not too frustrating to lose to, but has been really powerful for a really long time. So we were looking at making changes at the same time, like Gia touched on. There's this gameplay pattern of this is a hero where you're supposed to be making a decision and getting different outputs throughout the course of the game. But for a lot of players, it was always the same choice. So we're kind of forcing their hand and trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
No pun intended.
On the topic of frustrating heroes, I know Shady will have to talk about Lich Brazil. You know, what's your thoughts on that one? You know, that card, my hero is a bit much in terms of how much damage you can do.
This is absolutely a hero that's so essentially for people who aren't aware or don't play Lich this way. I have this window turn 5 to turn 7/8 where she has a really high probability of dealing like 10 or more damage to whoever she plays, almost regardless of her start. So that just felt really, I guess, frustrating that you say, well, because I queue into Lich, my game is now limited in options because I just have a lot less health. So is there anything, like essentially, what is your take on that?
Definitely a hero that we have our eyes on, because there have been comments from more than just you on that, Shady. Don't worry, we hear it. But it's something that we wanted to monitor rather outside the context of quests first before we make a final decision.
That makes sense. Appreciate the answer there.
It's just nice to hear that it's on the radar. So that's good.
And he's like, okay. All right, next hero we do have to talk about is Maleficent. Tinker.
Maleficent Manastorm.
Manastorm. That's she's married. Right. Exactly.
Sure. Okay.
So the hero power is getting changed to a passive. Whenever you summon a mech, give it +2 attack. So it's kind of similar to Deathwing, only for you and only for mechs. And it's actually better than Deathwing in the mech context, because you get the minions that you summon in battle also, if they're mechs, get the +2 attack. That's actually.
Yeah, I was talking a bit about why we nerf some cards, and that's also true for why we might buff some heroes, which is, you look at Maleficent, been on the weaker side for a while. Gameplay pattern is really more of like elemental identity before, of buffing mechs in the shop. Didn't really feel like a mech hero. So updating some gameplay, hopefully a buff, and we'll get her to see some more play.
Yeah, there's something interesting about minion type heroes. Because of how they're designed, just telling a player to force one minion type is actually just enough of a power increase of like how on average you're going to do it, that it's hard to make these heroes like statistically strong, because if you make them like strong on average, and a player that doesn't know what they're doing just knows, oh, I buy mechs, they're gonna do better just because they buy mechs, even if the hero power in itself isn't what's giving them that advantage. So it's always hard to figure out how do I design this hero in a way that feels fun to play, but also isn't like overshadowed or overpowered, because most people are just buying mechs or buying one type, and that's good enough, even if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. I think like Putricide might be a good example of you don't have to run undead with it, but it definitely benefits from having an undead comp.
All right. The cool one. We do have another one with minion types, Drexis. This hero has always been something I avoid. But
That's a very nice way to put it.
maybe now I might try it. So it's getting a change. Now you can choose a friendly demon. It consumes a minion in Bob's Tavern to gain its stats. So it's kind of like a mini Bellbat effect or a Mind Muck, I guess.
You choose the minion on your side, but you don't choose the one in the shop.
Right. It's just like a Fellbat effect for the minion you pick, but it does have some synergies with elemental scaling and stuff like that. So definitely in those lobbies where it's like demon Ellies, I think I might be looking at this more than I was before. So interesting.
With Drexis, like you were saying, just saying play a minion type is really good for new players. Drexis has historically been actually pretty powerful among lower MMR lobbies.
Right? I know.
And another thing that usually benefits lower MMR players is just flat scaling. If they can just give their board +1/+1, they tend to be less efficient with gold. They're getting less stats on average, so making it very clear is powerful for them. But it falls off at higher MMR. I think this one allows a lot more room for skill expression, identifying cards like the Legion Overseer or Elemental synergies that can reward higher skill players.
Definitely a fan of this change for sure. The last hero change we do have is Pyramid. So when I looked at this, it looked like it was a buff, but then Shady was like, why would they buff this? So he's like, I'm going back and checking. I'm checking.
Yeah.
And apparently,
I'm assuming. Yeah,
for it.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was listening to your year in the review, your last podcast, and you talked about like, yeah, Pyramid was really good, but because it's not that strong anymore. And I think that with a quest system, heroes that are able to get access to lots of minions helps them complete quests, tends to be stronger. I think with Pyramid, quests going out, we can say, hey, do we really want this to be like the best hero or one of the top few heroes? The answer is no. So it's a slight shave in the amount of stats he has access to.
Yeah, I do think like once quests are gone, you're gonna see the if it didn't get nerfed, you'd see it rise back into the top because it's so much health for free and you don't have to pay anything, 0 gold, and you get to choose, right? It used to be random and like so many buffs on it on top of the changes. So I do think quests were kind of making it feel not as impactful, but I do think once quests are gone, it would be very noticeable how impactful this more avenge units in the impactful, so able to give it health so that it doesn't die. Right, Green Thumb's coming back. Definitely think this is a nerf in the right direction. So the nerf is that it's starting 1 health lower, right? Essentially.
Correct.
Seems good. All right. So now we are kind of done with the things that we had to cover, right? So just checking back, we have 16 removed minions. We have the revamped the re-added Icy Imp and the re-added Green Thumb. Then we had the change to Amber Drake, Peggy, and Baron. And then we have the 4 heroes that are being adjusted in some way. Now, I have some cards Shady wanted to talk about. I also want to talk about, but I didn't read them all. So, but just these cards. First thing we did want to talk about is the Cyborg Drake. So this is a tier 5 2/8 Divine Shield minion. With your Divine Shield minions have +10 attack Mech Dragon. So theoretically, when you play it, it should get the buff itself. So it starts off as a 12/8 Divine Shield minion with upside. That sounds so good. That sounds so strong.
We were just interested if you guys in playtesting noticed that this was just like, yep, they have that. I guess I lose, or because this feels really strong.
So I guess some context to give: if a minion loses Divine Shield, it no longer has the buff. Okay. So this is like 12/8, but it becomes a 2/8 once it gets pinged once. So that's part of the balancing act here. And if you can do a lot of deflecto and holy mackerel things, you can take better advantage of this. But that's one way where it's like it's one hit of a bunch of damage, and then you're relying on that minion's base stats.
Yeah, my instinct here is that a lot of my Divine Shield are pretty good without plus 10 damage on them already. So I'm perfectly fine just taking 10 damage for the first hit. But yeah, I guess we'll have to feel it. We'll have to see if there's just some annoying stuff where, oh, they pinged my shields and it went into something useless and now they don't deal any damage anymore. But yeah, I'll probably still be having some fun with this at the start. See if it's as strong as I feel like it is.
Feels like a snap pick when you roll into it if you have nothing else to do. So definitely want to see how that feels. Next card we do, or next topic I guess is more about like the philosophy of these high tempo 6-drops, because we have noticed that you've added a lot of 6-drops that just have a ton of tempo, and that's not usually the case of what 6-drops used to be. They're more scaling 6-drops where you get them early, they're a little bit weak, and then as you keep them on the board, they just get stronger and stronger and stronger. Here we've added a ton of cards where you get them that turn, boom, you've won the fight most of the time, and just like it feels more of like a philosophy change from like some of the 6-drops of old into the 6-drops added. We kind of wanted to ask what your thoughts on these new drops and how powerful they feel from the get-go.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about. I think a lot of the way Battlegrounds has been playing out recently, when there isn't a system in the game, is it's about assembling a triple, leveling very quickly, and getting access to a scaling tier 6. And it creates moments where a lot of your success of that game is decided in one moment, and it's who gets the best scaling 6-drop. I think slightly decentralizing that playstyle, trying to push a little bit more tempo and like the tier 4 or tier 5, as I think you've identified over this review, helps promote spread out gameplay where your success isn't decided as much in one individual moment.
Yeah, that's very cool. That is very true in that a lot of games, especially if you're not like hyper competitive level, where you get your triple, you see what the triple is it good? I have a chance. Is it bad? I've lost. Like that's your I do think adding more like other things to do besides just going for those options and being able to fight in tempo on the lower tiers than just 6 is also a nice way of kind of alleviating or giving players more options how to navigate the game. So that's pretty cool. Wanted to hear your thoughts on this philosophy.
Yeah, I think it can maybe even lead to a situation where you are offered the tempo card and the scaling, but if the meta takes a certain shape, then you might want to pass on the scaling because you'll need to pick the tempo thing first so that you don't die to other people taking the tempo thing, and then you could maybe start scaling.
No,
so
shady.
Yeah,
Scale from the get-go.
Scale from the just Giga Chat, just scale anyway. Yeah,
We scale
No, I
or
mean,
die. That's the only option for me.
It did. It was something though, because like you trip her into Fell Stomper, you're just actually just stomping the next person. Like it's a lot of tempo. So yeah, okay, that's interesting. Definitely a bit of a change of pace with the 6-drops.
Next up, we do want to talk about Puffer Quill. So this is a new way to gain poison. That's really been, I guess, not common in the game, right? You've basically not given poison to any minion types besides Murlocs since the beginning. So we've added this new way to just get poison into the game, and this just kind of what are your thoughts on once there's only Murlocs having poison, and now just adding another way for other minion access to.
So I wasn't on the team yet at the time that the dual types were first conceived, but I did get to retroactively look back at the sheet that John was referencing of like, what are the mechanics that certain minion types have in common, right? And Quillbore and Naga was an interesting intersection because these are the two minion types that play with spells a lot. And when we think about poisonous, there's plenty of spellcraft that give a keyword, but we obviously cannot put poisonous as one of those because spellcraft can go on any minion. So the question was like, what's an interesting way to give limited access to poison? Because we still recognize that this is an important keyword to give comeback mechanisms, but the access to it has to be on a very fine balance. And I think in terms of minion types that could be good candidates to have access to poison, Quillbore was top of mind for me in particular, because it felt like they were one of the classes where, while they do have scaling, the attack-based one can get outclassed pretty easily or defeated by Divine Shield, and they needed something a bit extra going for them. So I think between that intersection, a design like this was a pretty good candidate to hit all of those gaps.
I think especially in the Coolbore setting, so the way how late game Coolbore plays out is I've got like 6 big things, and then I play 2 Necrolytes, and I have 2 big things. So it's really nice to be able to play something that then also just has an impact without having a ton of gems on it. So I think that does really help out the Coolbore end game, where you can stay in your own type for the most part.
And it's not hard to keep poison on this, like gems, spellcraft, really a lot of easy ways to get this poison. So I think if you're playing Quill or some, this will be a important piece, especially if you need poison. I guess. I mean, I'm happy because I do think there wasn't enough ways to deal with big stats, and I think that became more obvious even for most players once Toxfin's at 6, where you just fight someone who gets this big scaling early, and they have like just gigantic taunt. You can't really deal with it. Well, sometimes it's not taunted, and then if it's taunt, you can Leroy it. But let's say it's not taunted, you can't deal with it. Just being able to give players more options, and I think Quillbore is like definitely top of the list for something that could use this effectively, to just deal with all these big stat compositions that are pretty prevalent in the D stick. I'm happy with.
And a little confirmation here if Dark Gaze and Tralga would activate this.
It would, because its spell is played not after you play.
Okay. Nice. It's so easy to trigger this. Okay. All right. Sweet. And next up we do have Thin Runner Blanchi. We want to talk about. So this is kind of like a Terragosa, in my opinion. I don't know how to really clarify this, but it's a Reborn, and then this is Reborn with full health and enchantment. So I kind of want a clarification on that itself, and then more of a one died. You have to go. Any thoughts on clarification of this card and how it works?
Oh, did John die? Sorry, I was looking at something to clarify in chat too on the previous card, the Greta with the Puffer Quill, because how that works is if you just play the Gold Gun on Puffer Quill, it still needs to have another spell played on it to get the perma poison, but it will still have perma poison even after it reverts to a regular minion on the next turn. But if you do it in the other order of you play a spell, so it gets temp poison and then Greta Gold Gun it. So now it's a golden with a temp poison. If you don't play any other spell, when it goes back to normal next turn, it will not have the poison. Sorry.
Oh, that's very useful information. I think for Blanchy, essentially we just wanted to know if you guys did any crazy stuff already with this, because it just seems like such a meme card where you look at it and be like, yep, you can do some funny business with this.
Well, generally it's just a good target to give stats and Divine Shield. But in terms of crazy stuff, I would say some other undead can even go crazier.
Yeah, the start off as an undead card, and we wanted a card that you felt really good about buffing, kind of like a carry minion. And we thought that beasts have some reborn as part of their identity. We kind of want to expand on that. We thought there's some interesting things you can do and some beast comps with this, so we made it dual type.
And in terms of when it says full health and enchantments, what does enchantments consist of? Like, what does that mean? Like every buff ever given to this card, or is it just like specific buff type?
Within that combat, so it would be like Leapfrog or Death Rattle. It would be if you gave it taunt with fencing partner,
Right.
sparring partner, as well as stats.
If I glow scale this, will it reborn with Divine Shield?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, that's so definitely some potential there. Or it's, I guess you can compare it to Myrmidon in Nagas, where that's just a unit where you just throw a tons of buffs on it and you feel really good about it, especially if you golden it. Like there's just a multiplier at work there where you're very happy throwing your resources at that card.
Totally. And when designing these, I guess like Cleave is another example. Minions with Cleave, you want to scale up. And we look at this as a single minion for you to feel really good about buffing for it. When you're looking to buff a minion, it creates interesting decisions. And so this was playing that role in an undead, and then we expanded that to beasts.
When can I enchant Cleave? When is that coming? Classic Wind Fury Cleave enchantment on this. Yeah. When
Wind
is
Fury,
that coming?
Cleave, Poison. Yeah.
Next week, month.
When we have enchants for overkill too, so just the repeats.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Next card we do want to talk about is the Greta Gold Gun, right? I think this card needs its own like mini topic. So it's a spellcraft. Make a different friendly pirate or Naga golden until next turn. So this is basically Golden Hammer on a stick or a card.
Well, you can't throw it on a brand. You can't throw it on an Omi. So
it's basically Golden Hammer shade.
Basically Golden Hammer. Ridiculous.
No, it's a gun. What are you talking about?
Oh, that is true. That is very different. Yeah, so we talked about it a little in the context of the Hogger situation where Tony would enable Golden Hogger. So I suppose this is the closest thing where this was also a really common use for Golden Hammer. You just throw it on a Hogger, and then even if you have only 2 Hoggers, you're infinite. The question I had here is that I'm assuming that if you combine this, it's kind of like combining Nadinas, where you just don't like doing that, and it's probably too powerful if you give it a bonus for being golden, or like what was the idea behind that?
It would generally like it when goldening a minion gives you a bonus. Sometimes there just
too strong
isn't a way to really do that. It's especially difficult with spellcraft minions. That's why when we designed a lot of spellcraft minions like Gain Taunt or Wind Fury, we added stats to it. But here we didn't want to add stats to it. The point is it's really cool that you can give a minion golden automatically. So we just leaned in on that. And as a consequence, goldening it doesn't mean that you have any extra bonus.
Yeah.
Right. We do see the clarification on the gold gun, but if you have 2 different Gretas, you can't use the guns on each other, of course.
No, it's different. Part of the reason for that is if you can
the golden
target,
will make a new one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it would just always be right to golden that minion immediately, and that's just kind of like tedious APM opportunities for people to make mistakes that really aren't an decision. It's just a chore kind of to do.
Let me tell you about tedious APM.
You would have to like half the stats basically.
Very fair. I do think this is like one of the more interesting cards that I've seen, right? Because I haven't seen all of them. the added, where I think you could see a lot of cool things, especially with Nagas. I know golden Nagas are actually really powerful compared to some of the counterpoints. So being able to pick a Naga, make it golden, and play around that is going to be really impactful. And then of course Hogger's still in, so you hit a Hogger, you're happy, that kind of thing. Definitely a fun card. Then next up, we do have like a small tempo card, Jelly Belly. After a friendly minion is reborn, gain +3/+3. Shady kind of talked about it, how it seems to be a lot of tempo early, especially if you start with a reborn. You have like 2 reborns on your board. That's a 9/11, right? On Tavern 3, that's really, really good. So definitely a powerful card, I think.
Are we jumping into undead now? Sorry, I wasn't sure.
Feel free.
Is this a one of, or are we going through all?
We're going a little bit. Yeah.
I didn't know how much time we had. So I just,
okay.
We just got everything else out of the way, but we do have some undead still. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Okay,
feel
I
free to
just
talk
wanna-
about it.
Yeah, I might.
Yeah, I just want. Yeah, please.
I'm going to jump into some high-level undead philosophy. If you look at the last 2 minion types we added into the game, Quillbore and Naga, they had new mechanics, new keywords, and they're very focused on those keywords, and they kind of have like one end game comp each focused on those. And part of the reason we feel that works is because for blood gems and spellcraft, you can still mix them well with other minion types. They still benefit, but it means that their new mechanic has to be very flexible. With undead, we didn't want to end up in that same position. We wanted more broad, being able to work with existing cards, having a few different endgame comps. So, for example, one of them is Reborn. I think that does a great job of recontextualizing existing cards. Things like the Lich King. Now we can give anything Reborn. You've got these cards that care about Reborn. It's creating new decisions, new gameplay with existing cards, which I think is super fun. So that's why we went in the Reborn direction for Undead. And then, as you mentioned, this is a very valuable tempo piece where perhaps you see the tier 3 Reborn Dragon, Amber Guardian. Someone correct me if I have it wrong.
Bronze Warden is that one, yeah.
Bronze Warden, thank you. Yeah, and maybe you pair them up together.
I can see this getting nourished. I could see.
Oh, there was another card where we don't have this one in the slides, but we talked about it a little bit before the show, where it's another tempo 3-drop, the 2/4 with Avenge 1 every time a minion dies. Essentially, you are giving +3 attack to Menagerie, essentially. So if you have 4 different types, that's 12 attack. That's also really high tempo. So we do see those high tempo 3-drops coming out, and that can definitely lead to some swings where this is not nowhere near as bad as old Doomsayer on 3, but we definitely saw a race to like people tripling on tier 2 to try to get Doomsayer to just pop off. So yeah, that does create this I hit it or I didn't hit it type situation. And if I hit it, I'm strong and I can live, and if I don't, I'm stuck trying to survive.
Yeah, I think when there's multiple strong tempo minions, lots of people can hit it, right? It's not just a single one. And again, I talked a bit about like tempoing means that we can punish strategies that are just trying to level up to tier 6 and start scaling from there. So it's partly to create a range of curves and valid ways to play the game.
Very cool. Then next up, we do have Sister Death's Whisper. So this is definitely a perfect time to talk about Undead and all the cards. We don't really have all the Undead cards, but I do think this is like the main engine for one of the main engines for Undead. And that after you give a friendly minion Reborn, you give all of your Undead minions +1/+3 permanently, and that I assume persists through battle, right? Where if Undead in the, I mean, that's the only. I guess you can play one. No, I guess it has to be. It actually only triggers in battle, right? Because you can't trigger it in the shopping phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a combat trigger. One rule clarification is, let's say it's the second half of the Reborn, that wouldn't then keep its buff in the shop phase. Similar to how existing Reborns work with heroes like Rikara.
Yeah, this card just felt really strong. When I looked at the stat line, I got some pre-nerf Orgzoa vibes where I'm like, so this thing is like a lot of health, so it's gonna keep me alive, and at the same time, it also gives me, a very good direction. So definitely looks like it's gonna, promote playing on that at the start. Was that like a conscious decision where like, let's just make it? I mean, I'm just assuming that it's gonna be strong. I haven't played with the card, of course. You guys can maybe give some feedback if you have.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good point that you bring, Shady. So when we look at the previous two types, we have Quillbores and we have Nagas, right? When we saw that play out, it always seemed to be that these types tend to kind of dominate the meta and be very strong on release, and then afterwards, after you take some more data, then you kind of tone it down a bit. I was wondering if that is like a conscious design decision, lean into making it a little bit overtuned and then fix it, whereas making it undertuned and then having to buff and hope that people play with it.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about the philosophy of that. We have a new season. We want the game to change, so we need new content to be at least playable. A terrible thing would be, if you play the cool new stuff, you're gonna lose. I think some
Diablo.
examples of this are like
Release.
with buddies. Sorry, what was that?
I said Diablo on release.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have the
Diablo
same
was bad
idea.
on release.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
we
You
double
play it,
bumped
you're
was the
gonna
problem.
lose. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there's definitely, we are conscious about, hey, let's make this playable, especially when there's lobbies with lots of people wanting to play it. It means that there's fewer minions in that minion pool. But I think one lesson we've taken from the past is, hey, let's build in some counters on release so that if it does dominate the meta, there are ways to counter it. For Naga, the way you beat Athissa on launch was you get Athissa faster than them.
Right.
Now we've got cards like Cinderai Straight Shot.
That's
which
actually our
is-
next topic.
Okay, yeah.
We'll
Excellent.
bring it up.
So this is a Wind Fury Divine Shield minion, and when it attacks a minion, it removes its Reborn and Taunt from that target. So we wanted to build in some tech options for if undead do take over the meta, you have some counterplay. There's also another thing aspect, which is I talked a little bit about how undead have multiple archetypes. They kind of have their Reborn archetype. They've got a Nerubian attack buff archetype, where it's about buffing all of your minions' attack and then throwing waves of fragile high attack minions. And you have the Eternal Night comp. And so hopefully, even if lots of people are playing undead, they're playing undead in different ways, and it can feel different.
It's not the case where, like, let's say someone's playing like Elemental and it's like Naga or Nomi, and it always feels the same. They stay on 4 and get their Wind Furies, and then it's the same. So even if people are playing the same minion type, there's different ways to play that are both all viable. So you might see them play undead, but then you might see another undead comp, but they're playing 2 different compositions.
Yeah, maybe like Exodia Pirates and APM Pirates is a
Yeah.
similar comparison. How you like tech against those is very different. One you want poisonous, the other you're trying to like get zap.
Now I feel bad because I know it's gone, and that was like maybe my like top 3 or top 2 favorite comp. So yeah.
Just throw a
Yeah.
bunch of Barons, Collins. Or
Oh
Titus.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not completely dead.
Excuse me, he's Titus now.
Yeah.
Yeah, how dare you?
About the straight shot, the question I had is in playtesting, if you guys really noticed, like, I'm rolling for this now, because sometimes you have situations where you're fighting George, you roll for a blaster. You're fighting, someone with a bunch of big stats, you're rolling for Queen and Leroy, and you're skipping the rest. So yeah, if this comes up.
Definitely noticed, I would say more situations where you would think about it heavily if it's presented in the shop when you're in the spot in the game where you see your opponents undead. They're not necessarily like the terror of the lobby, so this is the only way to beat them is to find this. But it's kind of like maybe for this next combat, this would be a pretty good tech option to limit how much damage they can do with Reborn. It can be also in that spot where you are trying to hit this against one of the final fights. But I wouldn't say it's as desperate of a role for Zap against Sleepers or something like that, because it is tier 4 and a bit more common to hit. You could just see it without necessarily going for it. And on the flip side, when you're the undead person and aware that some people could be playing this in your comp, I find that you think twice about whether you want to give your Reborn targets taunt. Like Blanchy, for example, has in our playtesting been historically a good target for taunt because you want it to get stats from a taunt giver like Vigilant Stoneborn. You want it to come back, and you want your Reborn stuff to die in order so that you get maximal buffs from Sister Death Whisper. But if you put taunt on your Reborn, then it makes it served up on a silver platter for this Indore. So there's a lot to think about here.
So very similar to a Leroy big minion type situation where you either want to throw a bunch of distractions out there, so taunt everything and say, don't hit my Reborn, or we just avoid taunting the Reborn altogether.
Very cool. And you can give it 10 attack. Just saying, throwing it in there.
The first attack, though. First attack only.
Fair. I mean, that's the one that matters. But yeah, definitely a cool card. Next up we have a couple, I believe, cards to talk about. Next one is Kano
Normu.
Chronormu. Thank you. I'm horrible at pronouncing.
That's okay.
Appreciate that. When this is on Bob's Tavern, gain the stats of any minion sold. This is a very unique mechanic. You guys want to talk about?
Yes. Yeah, definitely throughout, I'd say mainly after introducing Tavern Tipper. In many playtests and on live, we got feedback like, oh, it feels so bad to have to sell this minion that I invested so much into because it just doesn't scale quick enough with the rest of my comp. So we were looking for ways to, you know, let people still pay out on that, but actually translate it into something that could stay in your endgame comp. And Chronormu was a way of doing that with also other interesting mechanics of like, you know, how many minions do you want to sell? Like you could sell down to less than 7 minions if you feel like that board space, you're gonna get a return on investment on it later by just consolidating all those stats into one thing.
I'm scared of this. I think this could be pretty powerful if I use it correctly. So definitely a fun one. I do like the interaction of how you can save minion stats. Where like Tipper is definitely a card where I play with it and then like I get my 6-drop. You know, because you play Tipper and you just ramp and then get your 6 and then you sell your Tipper afterwards. But if you have a way like, oh, I tripled into like a dragon synergy, and then I can sell my Tipper, play Chronormu, and salvage that Tipper stat line. That seems like a very elegant way of like continuing the composition, like the flow of the game. Like, oh, I play Tipper, and then I find a Chronormu, and then I win with Caligos Copium. You know, that kind of thing. So I could. For
I
sure.
think this patch is offering a lot of flexibility. You look at dual type minions, and it's like, okay, this is a dragon murloc. Do you want to go dragons with it or murlocs? You're not committed to that decision yet, but it opens up that window. With undead, we try to do multiple endgame comps, and you can kind of flex between them a bit. Once Chronormu, maybe you've got Blazing Skyfin and maybe some dragons and some murlocs. You're not quite sure which one you want to do. You've invested a bit of resources into both. You see this in the shop, and you feel like you can sell those murlocs, not lose value, and hard commit to dragons.
Yeah. Another cool thing with it is like you have this like a huge ball of minions, and then you sell the ball of minions. I'm assuming the ball is gonna give your minion stats, but then this Chronormu is also going to take the stats as well. That's very strong.
Good,
yeah. And then
Wait, before we go on, Colin, sorry, I messed up your smooth transition there. My bad.
I worked so hard on these transitions.
I know, I felt bad, but I still have to do it. So a little clarification on the golden version, because I can see some people reading the golden version and saying, well, how do I get the golden minion in the shop? That doesn't work, right? So maybe a little bit of elaborating on that.
So it is straight up true that this will almost never happen, that you get the golden Chronormu in shop, not even with Jandice, because you can't swap a golden minion into the shop. But some edge case scenarios, for example, the Yogg Wheel outcome that turns the minion in the shop golden, then you can do the crazy thing of, because the golden will say, well, in Bob's Tavern, gain twice the stats of any minion sold. But obviously that's extremely powerful, so we want this to be a very edge case scenario.
Right. I'm not sure if Ticketus can do that in this meta.
Yeah, there is the Dark Moon prize as well.
Yeah, well, that's very, very rare. But hey, you can chase it down, guys. Ticketus, make this golden and
show us the screenshots.
Well, I was gonna talk about Ball of Minions next. I just wanted to know what your thoughts on this card, because I think in this meta it's definitely a card that dominates and really forces how people play. A lot of compositions I think about can I utilize Ball of Minions well in terms of like whether I play it or commit. Just wanted to talk about. I do think there needs to be some type of amalgam minion, but what's your thoughts on this one specifically, how it's played out and how people utilize it?
Well, it's been very fun with Undead in because of the permanent attack buffing aura that we have that does apply to Ball of Minions, as it counts as Undead and Undead. So when you sell that, you get extra returns on your attack. But yeah, Ball is definitely a design that has, a lot of fans, and it's a card that has always been a bit tricky to have in mind when coming up with new designs. For example, like Anima Bribe had to go away for Ball. So it's something that we'll always have our eye on going in the future. But for now, I think it's pretty fun with Undead in.
Yeah, sorry, I was coughing. So here we're going a little bit more with it's just feel good. There's a lot of opportunities. You can do really cool stuff as opposed to maybe being a little bit like, well, maybe this interact because right now the way how people play APM Pirates, it's really funny, especially when Murlocs are in and you can Seafood Chef. You just make one huge golden ball of minions, and then you have like 3 golden ball of minions in your hand, and you just drop them on the board, and you sell the ball, and you just let it hop from one to another. So there's definitely some, and of course the classic. I'm buffing the shop, and I buy this. Oh, that's a 50-50 ball of minions. I guess I get 50-50 to my board right now. So there's definitely some crazy outcomes with ball where you're like, well, this feels a bit too strong, but I definitely hear you when you say it's a feel good minion when you pull it off and you throw a bunch of spellcrafts on a ball and sell it. It does feel pretty good.
Yeah.
With pirates in general, I would expect the completely infinite strategies to be a bit harder to pull off now that Tony Two Tusk is gone, and also with the removal of quests that do sometimes make it easier to get access to that. At that same time, there are still cool things you can do with Ball in a bit more of a capped scenario, which is just getting the gold gun, for example, just make an instantly golden ball, sell that. Same way with golden hammer. Of course, we'll continue to monitor that. If anything gets a little bit too out of control and is extremely prevalent, then we'll react accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, Seafood Slinger is still in, right? So you can still seafood a ball up and then sell that and cycle it that way and get a seafood again, right? Because you get the triple. So I've definitely had a game where you play Nomi, it's 50-50 ball, seafood the ball, get a sell it, get 100 stats, hit your Nomi, get another seafood, see another ball, sell it, get another seafood, and then I just have like a 300 health Nomi at the end of it. Kind of strong, but yeah, definitely a card that I do think could be looked at or see how it interacts, especially in the Nomi, in the undead non-quest meta, and see how it feels. And then we do have like one more final topic, just Toxfin on 6, right? So it's been out for a little while, and it is still a unique situation, right? This is a 1-2, right, on tier 6, and just kind of to your feels on your feels on Toxfin, how it feels, whether you like it on 6, and how you would look at it, in general.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. You start, and then I'll add on. Because you were saying
Okay,
smart things about this yesterday.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. So with the patch window that we had to address poison, this was going into a particularly long play period of time where we wouldn't be able to change something else because
Right.
end of the year, holidays, which means we expect more people to play, but we also have less time to work. So with Toxfin on 6, being on 4 actually across all MMR, this was not actually a big power outlier, but we're of course aware that poison across a wide board has always gotten some negative sentiment on. It just feels like the stats I worked hard to build don't matter. So with poison as a mechanic in general, it's something we were always looking at different ways to address long term. But while we are in the process of landing on something that we're very comfortable with, we wanted to give some sort of feels adjustment, for lack of a better term, that if poison is the thing that is stopping most of our players from having fun, what is a way to make this less prevalent, and how can we react to that after we've had some time to see how it did in the quest meta. So far the way it's landed, like initially, I know it felt very, very weird because it's just you triple into a 6 and you see this option, and it's just not something you feel happy about. But in terms of reducing poison prevalency, it has hit some of those goals, not all of them. So it's something we'll continue to think about. how we can adjust this in the future. But heading into the undead meta in particular, we expect poison prevalence to go down a little bit more even because of the token strategies coming up. And with the addition of a lot of other 6-drops, especially among dual type, we are hoping that the frequency of hitting Toxfin as your 666 and feeling bad is less prevalent.
A lot of people talk about this a lot, but I'm going to echo it about the role of Poisonous in the game. So Poisonous and effects like Leroy, Destroy effects are comeback mechanics. They can feel very frustrating where you go, wow, I got Golden Nomi so early on in the game, and I did all this work and got very lucky, and then I lost to like a Poisonous minion. But on the flip side, you don't ever want to be in a position where you know how the game's going to play out. If you go against that player with Golden Nomi and go, oh no, they're scaling like crazy, no one in the lobby can compete, you want to be able to have tools at your disposal to react to that. And that's the role Poisonous plays in the game as a whole. So this was also, like Gia said, reducing prevalency, seeing and learning how does the game play out when it's been reduced a little bit.
I will say that my experience, like I thought it was going to be a bit much, move to 6, but I really enjoyed it because I still get poison a lot of the times when I need it, but I just need to plan a lot more for it. I mentioned at the start of the broadcast that maybe a quarter of my games was just spam Murlocs with Honsho and then look for Toxin. So maybe make that half of my games from Murlocs. So that's not fun when that's the optimal play. So I think that's something you guys are very aware of, that you don't want the optimal play to suck, because then it's like, yeah, you want it to be cool. You want to have fun with it. So the right now you do have to go to 6, and there is still that opportunity that you are going to take off with Bran and Seafood Slinger and stuff. And I don't think people mind losing to that too much, but they minded losing to the person that just had Snickersnack Toxfin on tier 4, never leveled, probably never tripled, and still beats them because, well, maybe they tripled a Selfless Hero, and that's it. And they still just beat a comp. They would have to make some pretty specific pivots to incorporate Cleave or Golden Blast or just snipe something. So yeah, I just wanted to say that while it did not look intuitive to me, I have been enjoying playing with the tier 6 Toxfin.
Great answer. You hit the answer to the questions. I do think that is the final topic we have. There are just a couple minions and things we wanted to cover before we go. Do you guys have any final words? Any things you want to talk about? Anything I missed? You're like, Collins,
I want to talk on something because I disconnected from the call earlier. I was back on Puffer Quill.
All right,
and I want to talk about some design philosophy of effects in the game. We have combat effects and we have shop effects. And I'm going to give some extreme cases of comps with one. Imagine a world where you're making a bunch of fun decisions during shop with things like spellcraft and blood gems. But when it comes to the combat phase, none of the minions have effects. They're just their stats. I think there's lots of fun decisions in the shop aspect. But when it comes to combat, you kind of know how it's going to play out. You're not excited to watch the combat. You're just waiting to take your turn again. If you suddenly introduce something like a poisonous minion, there's a lot of tension. Is it going to hit their biggest minion? Maybe there's a divine shield minion in there, and you're hoping your 1/1 hits it. So when building comps, we try to balance this ratio of shop and combat effects. Some comps lean more into one than the other, and that's totally okay. That makes them feel different, but we don't want to be too extreme with one. So for example, Pirates, APM Pirates is very heavy on shop effects, whereas Exodia Pirates is very heavy on combat effects. So this was that with Naga and Quillbore, we felt like they were a little light on combat effects, so we wanted to make sure the dual type could address that. And on the flip side with Undead, when designing it, we talked a lot about trying to get more combat effects into the game, and it was more focused on that aspect.
Really, really interesting thought philosophy. I haven't really thought about the unit types in that way, where I just play whatever's strong. I don't care if it's strong in the shop or the stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, please go ahead, Collins.
but adding that thought process where you want the shop to feel impactful and you want the combat to feel, definitely think crowbars are the crowbars are the minion types where I'm like, this needs more stuff. Like I need to do more stuff with crowbars. So definitely like adding poison to that. Nagas, Nagas already have divine shield and they double their stats, and you get free spellcraft.
Sure,
they're
yeah.
fine. Crowbar, yeah, I definitely understand. Any other
Yeah.
things?
I was gonna say on the topic of the combat sort of suspense with Nagas, I think a lot of that is provided by your opponent, where you usually have a big Myrmidon or so, or you have, some of the Nagas that you've had around for a long time that have been buffed by Atissim. But yeah, then if they don't have a poison, you just okay, it's over.
Yeah, like if it's a mirror, right? There's less of that.
I think that's it. Making good time.
Yeah. They told me how much time I have. I was like,
Perfect.
perfect.
All right, excellent.
So yeah, that will be it for our special dev interview. John, Gia, thank you so much for being here, for dealing with us, and everything. Definitely, and Chad as well. Thank you guys for being here. You can find us at Collins Shady Bunny. Gia, where can we find you? John, where can we? Can't find us anymore. We're just developers now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm still on Twitter at GAD_, but I am a lot less active lately. This job takes time. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at John EV McIntyre.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having me. We'll see you guys on the next one. Actually, we're gonna be doing one on Friday as well. Cover everything because we couldn't cover everything in
A lot more,
this
yeah.
call. Yeah. So on Friday we're gonna go and dive deep and see what we think is gonna break the game. Basically, we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, thank you. Have a good
Thanks
day.
for having us.